Hello there, everybody. I am Sapna Mahadevan, your host for this beautiful evening, and I am back again, refreshed and rejuvenated after a long festive weekend. So, you all tell me, how was your weekend? What were the things that you did? Did you miss these classes? Yes, go ahead and type out your comments in the chat box. I am really eager to know all your comments, your thoughts. Do share them with me in the chat box here. Hello, a big wave of hello to all of you who are watching me live. And thanks for joining the live today. Yes, so it was a long time I have not seen you all, but here I am with another exciting episode of the Fiction Story Writing Masterclass, right? So before we start with our episode of today, let me tell you more about palindromes. Have you heard about the word? Let me know in the chat box, right? I'm talking about palindromes. Do you know what this is? If you know about this, then do give me a yay or maybe any show of emoji, some show of hands in the chat box, and do let me know. Just like the other day, I spoke about pangrams. Today, I'm going to talk about palindromes, and these are really interesting words or phrases in English which we have learnt about in our English classes. So, if you do remember and recollect about these words and phrases, then do type out your yays in the chat box, right? And for the unversed, no problem at all. I am here to give you more information about the palindromes. So I get a yay in the chat box there. Okay, so Anukriti, can you go ahead and let me know what is your understanding of a palindrome, right? I get some notes also in the chat box there, so no problem at all. Let me tell you what a palindrome is, right? So, a palindrome is a word or a sentence, a phrase, or even a number which reads the same backward or forward, right? So, this word here, palindrome, it derives from Greek roots and it literally means running back. So, palin in Greek is again or back, and dronos or dromos is running. So, the word, if you put that together, it means running back. So, any sentence, word, or a phrase, or even a number, if you can read that backwards as well to the same effect, then that's called a palindrome, right? So let me tell you some popular palindromes that you wouldn't have even realized that you're using in your daily vocabulary, right? So words like noon, 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 and civic, or maybe mom, right? Even level, all of these words are palindromes. So do try spelling them backwards. You're going to get the same word, right? Level, mom, civic, race car, and even noon, right? So these are some popular palindromes. We don't even realize we are using them in our daily vocabulary, right? Do let me know if you had fun learning about these words or phrases. And let me also tell you that one of the local South Indian languages, which is Malayalam, that also is a palindrome. So try spelling that backwards, or you can even write that down in a piece of paper and try reading that backwards. You're going to get the same word again. Yes, and here I have Ar- Arkajyoti. Am I pronouncing that name right? Arkajyoti Sarkar, giving me the palindrome dad. Yes, how can we forget that palindrome, right? So dad again is a palindrome. You read it forward or backward, you get the same word. Yes, kudos to that, Arkajyoti. And then Shiva Kumar here saying good evening. So, yes, very good evening to you as well, Shivakumar, and thanks for joining the live. And I get other emojis here in the chat box. So, I know all of you had fun learning about palindromes, right? Okay, great. So, let me also give you a phrase, maybe, which is a palindrome. If you say the sentence, poor Dan is in a droop, right? That's again a palindrome. So, normally when we use the palindrome, then we do not use punctuations or capital letters, right? We just ignore the capitalization and the punctuations. But if you spell it backwards, or if you try reading the whole sentence backwards, then it's going to make sense. So I also told you at the starting that even numbers could be palindrome, right? So the year 2002 is a palindrome, because even if you read it backwards, it's going to give you the same year once again. 2002, right? So these are palindromes. Do Google them up. You're going to get some popular phrases, words, and sentences even, which are palindromes, and it is really interesting to learn about all of these things, right? Okay, so let's move ahead. I have Arkajyoti giving me so many words here which are palindromes. One is a rotator. Yes, that's a palindrome. And then a tenet. And was it a car or a cat I saw? Yes, that's an interesting one, Arkajyoti. Lovely. Thanks for typing out all of those comments in the chat box here. And I'm really having fun here. So let's get going with the session of today. We are going to delve deeper into the fiction story writing masterclass. And I want you all to unleash the writer in you. Yes. So coming up, we have a gamut of activities lined up for all of my wonderful bunch of viewers here. And we are going to delve deeper into essentials, some plot building pointers for whatever is the category of story writing that we are going to explore for today, right? And apart from the essentials and the plot building pointers, expert tips that I give you, to aid you in your story writing process, apart from all of those things, we also have some fun segments. And take it from me, all of these fun segments are planned in such a way that you're going to get a whole lot of insights from them as well, right? So the fun segments I'm going to play out with all of you people today is one of them is the Think Like a Pro segment. Then we have the crossword segment where we are supposed to find out the hidden words. You need to have an eagle's vision and check out for all the hidden words in a letter maze, right? And then today, instead of a Google It segment, we have a synonym it segment. So as you would understand from the name itself, it suggests that I am going to tell you about some words and their synonyms, so word meanings, right? And apart from that, I have a recommendation of the day, which is a movie for today. And just at the end of the session, I will refresh you all with the At a Glance segment, which is, a quick roundup of all the insights we have had in today's session, right? And we will start with some icebreaker questions, which will keep popping up in between the session every now and then, unnoticed, and it's going to give us a lot of insight about each other, right? So these are the gamut of activities planned up for all of you wonderful people, and I hope you're going to have as much fun as we had in planning all these segments out for you guys, right? So let's get going with the first icebreaker question, and it says, what is your favorite thing about Diwali? So that's the festival that just went by, and I hope you all had a fun time. People who celebrate Diwali, do let me know what is your favorite thing about this festival, right? So do go ahead and type out your answers in the chat box. I am all curious to know your responses, right? Okay. So I have a lot of hellos there in the chat box. Jennifer giving me a warm hi. And Arkajyoti saying firecrackers. Of course, firecrackers, one thing which is favorite about Diwali. But of course, we need to also take care of the environment at the same time, right? Yes, firecrackers it is. And the thing that I love about Diwali is the festive vibe that it has to it. All the lights and the traditional diyas that we light up, right? The lamps that we light up, that is one favorite thing about Diwali for me. And of course, the family time, the time that we spend with our friends during this festival time, and the whole vibe of the festival is something that I really love about it, right? So firecrackers is one comment there, and then I get family and friend time. Okay, thanks for that comment there, Anupriti. Yes. And then I have a lot of emojis as well come up there in the chat box. So, yes, thanks a lot for joining in the live today. And let's get going with the next segment, which is, what is the genre, right? So what's the genre that we are going to explore for today and discover, right? The broader genre because it is Monday today, the broader genre is fantasy. And as we all know, fantasy is one speculative piece of fiction where there are a lot of magical and supernatural elements that are happening in our story, and it is also very outwardly. It cannot really happen in the real world setting, right? So that's fantasy for you. It's an all in all fiction. which stems up from the author's imagination, right? And in fantasy, what's the subgenre that we are going to look out for today, right? So the subgenre in fantasy is urban fantasy, right? So this is one genre of stories with magical or supernatural elements that take place in a contemporary city, or maybe in a town kind of a setting, right? So it is set in today's modern city, and that's what is the takeaway from an urban fantasy, right? So that's an urban fantasy that we are going to explore for today. So all the elements of magic and supernatural, put together in a setting which is urban, contemporary, or city-like, or a town kind of a setting, and it's going to be really immersive, right? So that's the genre that we are going to look out for today. It's urban fantasy. And let's look at the next icebreaker question, which is, what is your favorite sweet? Okay, so that's the next question that we have here. Go ahead and type out your answers in the chat box. Do let me know which is your favorite sweet, right? So the first comment that I get there is cake. Lovely. We all love our cakes, right? Chocolate and hazelnut and brownies, and what all flavors can I think of, right? Yes. So cake it is for Jennifer. What else? What are the sweets that you love? Okay, I get an Indian sweet there, which goes by the name jalebi. So thanks a lot for that, Anukriti. Um, yes, so that's a sweet meat which is dipped in sugar syrup, and really yummy sweet, Indian sweet, right? Okay, what else? So I have another favorite down. Um, that's right. So jalebi is another sweet that's coming up there in the chat box. Okay, I think anything sweet is another comment that I get there from Rohit, right? So I think Rohit has a sweet tooth here, and he would go for any sweet, whatever it is. So doesn't matter, right? Yes, Rohit, I totally get that. Okay, so favorite sweets come up there. We have an Indian sweet, and then we have a lot of cake varieties, and then I have donut come up there. Lovely, with a lot of pink frosting toppings. Lovely. Okay. So that's really yummy delicious, isn't it? Great going there. So let's move ahead after that second icebreaker question to the next segment, which is establishing the essentials. So today, for writing a story, an engaging one at that, on this genre of urban fantasy, let's look at what are the essentials, right? So there are three definite elements that you would want to have in your urban fantasy story. And let me spell out all the three elements right there on the screen. The first one is the setting, and then we have the supernatural elements, and then of course the protagonist, right? So what is a story without some characters, right? So we do have a protagonist in this story as well, and let's look at each of these elements in greater detail. The first one that we have here is the setting. So as we already know, urban setting, that's there in the name of the genre itself. So what it suggests is that the story should be set in a modern day urban kind of a city. Preferably it could be a big metropolitan city, and you can talk about an immersive setting, and give a lot of vivid details about that place. Maybe when I'm talking about a metropolitan city, then there is going to be a lot of crowd, maybe bustling images of people all around the place, and then some skyscrapers, modern technology, right? These are all the things that come to our mind when we think about an urban setting. Yes. So what you need to do is, before you start to write a story on urban fantasy, you need to first sketch out a setting which is urban in nature. It could be a metropolitan city, a famous town, maybe, or any place which is urban in characteristic, and think about all the places that you can cover in that setting, and give a visual description to your audience, to your readers, of how that place looks like, right? So that's the first essential here, the setting, which is going to be urban, right? Now after that, let's move ahead to the second element, which is the supernatural elements, right? So because it's a fantasy story, magic is one of the elements that every fantasy novel needs, right? So the supernatural elements or the magic, it could be in the form of maybe vampires, demons, witches, or wizards. And it really depends on you, your imagination as an author. What is that one supernatural element that you need to focus on in your story, right? So only thing that you need to remember is that since it is fantasy, it is something that does not happen in the real world setting, right? So talk about or introduce some of the supernatural elements in the form of vampires, witches, wizards, right, demons maybe. And remember that supernatural elements or quirky magic is something which is vital to your story, right? So that's the second essential there. And moving on to the third essential element, we have the protagonist, right? So the protagonist of the story is the backbone of our story, and he or she should be someone who plays the part of both the real world setting as well as the supernatural world, right? So they would be having some kind of a supernatural power, which really makes them a part of the supernatural world as well, right? So this supernatural power again is something that comes from your imagination. You can spark up your creativity and come up with a supernatural power, which could be immense strength that your protagonist has, or maybe a power to teleport themselves, or maybe some other power where they become invisible, right? So there are a lot of supernatural powers that we have seen in our popular movies, fantasy movies, or in popular fantasy stories that we have read, right? So you can take inspiration from all of these movies and from stories that you have come to know of, or maybe from legends and folklores, and form your own story with your own protagonist who has the supernatural power to change the world, right? So that's the third element that we have there. So summarizing all of the essentials that we spoke about in this segment, we have the setting, which is going to be urban, and then we have the quirky magic or the supernatural elements, which again is based upon your imagination. And then the third element that we have here is the protagonist, who also is a part of both of these worlds, which is the real world and the supernatural world as well, right? So these were the essentials. And after this, let's move ahead to the first synonymate segment. And the first synonymate word is vital, right? So as we all know, synonym means similar word meanings, right? So the word here is vital, and the synonyms for vital could be crucial, important, or even indispensable, right? So these are the synonyms for vital. And as you would have gathered by now, vital means something which is crucial or important. So what we saw here is that the protagonist is going to be vital to our story, and similarly the supernatural element is also going to be vital to our urban fantasy story, right? So this was the first synonymate word for today. And moving on to the next segment, we have the next icebreaker question here. It says, what is your favorite ride? Okay, so go ahead and type out your answers in the chat box. Which is your favorite ride? Mm, I, for one, do not really, I'm not tempted to go on these rides, because I have that stomach churning feeling that I do not really love, right? So, yes, something that I do not really like doing. But if you are the one who really loves going on rides, then do let me know which is your favorite one. Okay. So I get a comment here. It says the giant wheel. Okay. So the giant wheel, I think, is similar to a merry-go-round, isn't it? So yes, that's the one. A giant wheel is what Anukriti tells me here. Okay, and then bungee jumping is another activity that Varun here loves. Okay, so all brave people here joining me in the live today, right? Bungee jumping, and then I have merry-go-round. Okay, great. Okay, so another comment here from Joseph, and it says bumping car. Okay, so I think the one where you take ride in a bumping car, in a car, and then you keep bumping around with all the people who are riding next to you, right? Yes, so that's the one. I get a thumbs up there in the chat box. So I have a bumping car, a bungee jumping, and also merry-go-round. Lovely. Thanks for all of those comments there. Lovely to know all your favorite rides here. Yes. Great. Okay. So let's get going now to the next segment. And the next segment here is, expert tips on establishing the essentials. And I'm going to give you some expert tips, which is really going to aid you in your story writing process. So I get a good evening message there from Shilpi Verma. Hello there, Shilpi. Thanks for joining the live. And a very good evening to you as well. And today, here we are discussing how we can be writing an urban fantasy story, right? So, this is a beginner's guide, and you can get a lot of insights from today's episode on how you can be writing a story all by yourself. I know for starts, it sounds a little intimidating, but take it from me. If you take it's only about the first step, and if you put pen to paper, then you're surely definitely going to get a lot of ideas, and all of us are really creative enough to think about ideas and all the elements that I'm going to discuss out here today. So I'm sure that you're going to put up a great story, right? So yes, I get a thumbs up there. So let's get going with the expert tips. The first expert tip that I have here is, the supernatural creature that you're going to introduce into your story, or even the quirky magic. It can exist in secret in your story, so that other people or the other characters of your story are not aware of it, but only the main characters know about it, right? So this is one form in which you can add depth to your story, and it totally depends on you if you want to take this particular path or not, right? Or you can also showcase that this supernatural creature or the magic, it exists openly, and everyone, all the characters of your story are aware about it, right? So it totally depends on which path you want to take or you want to progress with in your story, right? That's the first expert tip. And it's going to really add a lot of depth to your story. If it is a secret element that you're showcasing in your story, then it's going to really add a lot of mystery, and just at that point when you're going to reveal that particular creature out to your audience, it's going to have that impact in your readers' minds, right? So again, totally depends on the budding author's imagination and creativity, but I for one definitely feel that it should be kept in the secret, and so that it could jump at or really add that mystery element into your story. Yes, so that was the first expert tip. Moving on to the second expert tip that we have here. The story should focus on the magic as well. It can be inspired by folklore, maybe some legends that we have seen throughout history, or maybe a folk tale that you have heard from your grandparents, right? It could be anything that you can depend your magic on, but in the story, it will come true in the modern world, right? So magic is another area where we need to really focus on for our urban fantasy story. So that's the second element here. But again, since it's an urban fantasy, what we need to make sure here is that there is a balance between the magic that we are introducing and the real world setting, right? So the magic or the supernatural creature should be such that it really is in sync with our setting of the urban city or the metropolitan city, right? So that's another point that we need to really make sure while writing an urban fantasy story, right? So after this, let's move on to the next expert tip. And the third expert tip that we have here is that since the story is set in a real city or in a real world setting, what you can also do to turn on that impact and to make it relatable to your audience is you can talk about all the important places in that city. For example, if you're talking about, say, the city of Mumbai, in India, right? So if that is the city that you're basing your story on, then you can talk about all the popular places in Mumbai. And you can make it relatable with your audience members, right? So people who are from that part of the city will really find it mesmerizing, and they'll be in awe while they are reading about your story, and also coming to know of places they have already visited and they are aware of, right? So that's what I mean by making it relatable with your audience, right? So everything about that city, you can talk about the roads, how are the houses, the people in that city, so many things that you can relate with, for that city maybe that you're talking about in your story, right? So that is expert tip number 3. And if you keep all of these elements and the expert tips in mind, and write a story, then I'm sure that it's going to be a power packed one, and it's really going to make an impression on your readers' minds, right? So, apart from all of these expert tips, while I go further with the episode, I will be also letting you know on some plot building pointers and some expert tips relating to that area, right? So, after these expert tips on establishing the essentials, let me move ahead to the next synonymous word, which is folklore, right? And I can see a lot of likes here and a lot of emojis here in the chat box. So thanks a lot. I'm filled with gratitude for all of these comments and the likes that I'm getting in the chat box here. And do stay tuned in here. We are going to have a whole lot of fun with a lot of learning, and that's a promise that I make today and every day for all of these episodes that we have in Planet Spark, right? So this is the next synonymous word that we have, which is folklore. And folklore, let me also tell you, the L is silent here, so it is folklore. And folklore also means myth, legend, or even fables, right? So you can Google up the word folklore, find out its meaning, and jot all of these synonyms in your Google it or your synonym it diary, right? Yes. So synonym it or a Google it diary is just one place where you journal all your words and synonyms that I bring about in all of these daily episodes, right? So that you have a repository of words which you can include in your daily vocabulary, and you can amp up your vocabulary, right? So this is the second word in the synonymous segment today, which is folklore, which also means myth, legend, or fables, right? So let's move ahead with the next icebreaker question, right? That is, what is your favorite comedy TV series or movie? Yes, so that's the next icebreaker question. Go ahead and type out your answers in the chat box, and do let me know your favorite TV series, which is a comedy one, or even a movie that you can write out in the chat box here. Okay. Okay, so the first one that I get there is Mr. Bean. Yes, that's Rowan Atkinson, really making us laugh, right? Our heart out. Yes, so that's the first one that I get there, Mr. Bean. Okay, and then I have Looney Tunes come up there. Lovely. That's a lovely choice, Anukriti. Okay, and then I also have SpongeBob and SquarePants, Tom and Jerry. Great options. Okay, I have another hi there from, I think that should be pronounced Ale. Is that Ale? I'm so sorry for that pronunciation, but I'm not sure how that handle has to be pronounced. But a big hello to you. Um, okay, and then I also have Munna Bhai series come up there. So that's a famous Bollywood series, which is a comedy movie, right? Yes, thanks for that, Varun. Okay, so let me summarize all of the comedy TV series that I have got there. I have Tom and Jerry, and then Mr. Bean, Looney Tunes, SpongeBob and SquarePants, and then Munna Bhai series. Lovely. Okay, so thanks a lot for that. Some lovely choices there in the chat box. Yes, and then let's move ahead with the next segment. The next segment is a fun segment, which is a movie title trivia. And here you need to guess these urban fantasy story movie titles, right? So I'm going to show you some pictures. There is the first one that I have here. It's also a popular storybook or a novel which was made into a movie, right? So can you guess which is the name? What is the name of this movie? We have Johnny Depp featuring in that movie there. And yes, I have correct answers in the chat box. That is right. It is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Lovely. And that was another urban fantasy, right? Okay, so let's move ahead to the next one. Here it is. Do you know the name of this movie that I have on my screen? Mm, so I have some question marks come up there. Yes, and one of the correct answers, that is right. It is Highlander. Lovely. Thanks again for that response there. And kudos to you for the brilliant job. And let's move ahead to the next one here. There you go. That's a popular Bollywood movie. And it was a comedy movie which featured Rani Mukherjee and Saif Ali Khan. So do let me know if you have the answers for this one. Mm, I am not getting any responses there. And unfortunately, Prisha, I don't think that's the right one. Okay, so let me give that out to you. That's Thora Pyar, Thora Magic. Okay, so that's the one there. And brace yourselves for the last one. The last picture that I'm going to show you here. There it goes. Which is this movie? Okay, so I have correct answers again in the chat box, and that is right. It is Doctor Strange. Lovely. So, again, thanks a lot for all of these responses. And I think you have done a good job here. You had most of the answers correct, right? So, let's move ahead to the next segment. I also have another question for you. If you have watched any urban fantasy movies, then do go ahead and type out your answers in the chat box. I am all ears and really waiting to know if there are any urban fantasy movies that you have watched. Okay, Jasraj and Khushi channel. That's the handle that's joined me on the live just now. Good evening there. And Doctor Strange is the correct answer. Yes, thanks a lot for that Jasraj. Okay, so let's move ahead to the next segment, which is plotting the plot, right? So now again, there are three important elements for writing an engaging urban fantasy story. All of the three elements right there on the screen. The first one is the conflict, and then I have the modern world, also adding mystery to your story, right? So the first one here is the conflict, right? So you can add some kind of conflict in the story, which will also be kind of a central plot to your story. And this conflict, it can also serve a purpose where the supernatural creature and the protagonist, they come together jointly and try to solve it, right? So it's going to form the central plot of your story. That's the conflict that you're going to raise in your story's plot, right? um, Welcome is the comment that Just Raj gives me. um, Yes, okay. So let's move ahead to the next element that we have here. After the conflict, we also have the modern world. So, as we saw, that the urban setting is one of the essential prerequisites that we want to have in our urban fantasy story, right? So, we can also showcase some modern life problems that people generally face in the urban setting, right? So, this is again going to help in building up your story's plot. Keep the situation and all the problems that you're going to write in your story relatable with your audience members. It could be a problem of maybe scarcity of space, right? That usually people face in an urban setting, or maybe it could be loneliness, or lack of emotions that people have because they are people in an urban setting, in a metropolitan city. Usually they are so busy with their lives that there's um, not much of an emotion or a bonding that you have with your neighbors, right? So that could be one of the problems that the society in an urban setting faces, right? So bring up a lot of creativity and try to introduce some kind of a problem that your society in an urban setting is facing, and that again is going to be relatable with your audience members, right? So Yes. And then moving ahead to the third element that we have here, which is adding mystery, right? So while writing an urban fantasy story, what you can also do to, amp up that story's thrill is maybe craft a killer action scene, right? Keep it thrilling and pack it with a lot of punch, right? And you can also add a lot of mystery, maybe a heart pounding chase throughout the city's streets, okay? And then, in all, you can try and inject plenty of action scenes throughout your story and introduce a vibe of mystery into your story, right? So the readers should face a lot of surprises in every turn that they read in the story, and they can also turn detectives for everything that is happening in your story, right? So that's the mystery or the thrill that you're going to add to your story, and that's again going to, be compelling read for your audience, and also going to make it engaging and thrilling, um, at the very least, right? So that's another element that we have there in plotting the plot, which is adding a lot of mystery into your story, maybe crafting killer action scenes, right, or showcasing a heart pounding chase throughout the city streets. Yes. So these are some of the ways in which you can give that engaging feel to your story, right? So after this, um, I have a comment again there from Just Raj. Hello, Just Raj. You can post your questions here in the chat box, and I will be glad to answer. Um, of course, yes, do go ahead and write out your comment in the chat box here. Great. So moving on to the next segment that we have here, which is the synonymous segment. And here we have the third word for today, which is aura, right? Now, aura, other words that have similar meanings are ambience, atmosphere, or even spirit, right? So what is the vibe? What's the aura, the ambience of the place, right? So do go ahead and check out in Google. Um, Yes, just Raj, you can go ahead and type out whatever you want to say in the chat box here. And I'm all ears. Okay, right. So that was the synonymous word that we had, which is aura. And again, word meanings or synonyms for aura are ambience, atmosphere, and spirit, right? So do go ahead and check out the word in Google. Also come up with sentences, how you can be framing that word in a sentence, and try and use it in your vocabulary wherever appropriate, right? Okay, so let's move ahead to the next segment. And okay, I have um comment here from Just Raj, and he's okay. So, what is aura, right? So, let me tell you, Just Raj, aura means maybe a distinctive atmosphere, right? Or where it seems to be surrounded by something, maybe a person, or it is generated by a person or a thing, right? Which has a particular definitive feel to it, right? That's the meaning of aura. It could be generated by a person or maybe by a place as well, right? So when you go somewhere, and if I say that place had a certain aura to it, right, which would mean that the atmosphere of that place was very distinctive, right? So I hope that I have answered your question here. Do give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you have come to know of the meaning, right? Okay. So let's move ahead with the next segment. And the next segment that we have here is a recommendation of the day, which is a movie for today. And the name of the movie is Onward, right? So this is a Disney Pixar movie, Onward. And this is a recommendation for all of my wonderful bunch of people watching me live today, right? Go ahead and watch this movie. It's going to be an interesting time that you're going to have watching this movie. And let me also tell you a brief summary of what the movie is all about. It's set in fantasy world, right? And again, it is urban fantasy, right? Where two teenage elf brothers, Iron and Barley, they go on a journey, and they embark on a journey to discover if there is still some magic left out there in the world. And they try to resurrect their father back into this real world, who had expired when they were too young to remember him, right? So, this is what the movie is all about, and it's a recommendation from us to you. Do have a fun time watching this movie, Disney Pixar's Onward, right? Okay. Um, okay, so Jasraj here tells me that they have subscribed the channel in YouTube, and I'm so glad, Jasraj. Um, Right. Thanks for that. And lovely to know that you liked our channel, and you have subscribed it. So there are a lot of live episodes that happen each day, and a lot of my colleagues um, have different topics that they explore. So I know that you're going to have a lot of insights from this channel, right? Yes. Great going there. Okay, so that was the recommendation of the day for all of you people here, Disney Pixar's Onward. And let me now move ahead to the next segment, which is expert tips on plotting the plot, right? So again, the first expert tip that I have here is, you can take inspiration from all the urban fantasy novels. And all these urban fantasy novels, they are usually directed at an audience which is young adults. And thereby you can also keep your storyline and plot, and the descriptions according to their liking, right? So that's one expert tip. And the second expert tip that we have here is that you can concentrate on the effect that the supernatural elements or the creatures will have on the world, right? So what are the reactions that the people of your, or the characters of your story, have towards those supernatural elements that you have introduced into your story, right? That could also be one of the elements which will add some depth to your story. Yes, so that was the second expert tip here. Okay. So let me answer Jasrad's question here. So I do come live every day, Monday through Saturday at 6 p.m. India time, Jasraj. And you can join us during that time for the live, where we discuss the master class on fiction story writing, right? And then we have other episodes as well. Um, right. Yes, thanks for that, Jasraj. And there are other episodes as well, as I was mentioning, which you can also, revisit the live episodes that have happened, and check out all the previous episodes as well, right? Okay. Yes, so the next class would be tomorrow at 6 p.m. India time. Right. So let's move ahead with the next expert tip that we have here, which is frame the protagonist in a good manner, and keep the protagonist preferably young and relatable to your readers, right? So, because the protagonist is going to be the backbone of your story, they are going to be the character whom your audience members are going to relate with, because he or she is the person who has the supernatural powers, right? And so there has to be that connect or that vibe with your audience members. Yes, so try and keep the protagonist young, and so that they are really relatable to your audience, which is targeted at young adults. Yes, so that is the third expert tip that we have here. And let's move ahead to the next segment, which is the synonymous segment. And the next word that we have for today is relatable. So let me tell you, the synonyms for relatable are accessible, understandable, or even approachable, right? So these are the synonyms, and you can definitely go ahead and check out for the meaning of relatable. in Google. And of course, with all of these synonyms, I'm sure that you have already understood the meaning, right? It is understandable or approachable, right? So let's move ahead to the next segment, which is a Think Like a Pro segment. And in this segment, I want all of you to put on your thinking caps and guess these metropolitan cities by looking at the famous landmarks situated there, right? So the first picture that we have here is the Statue of Liberty. So can you guess which is the place? Just Raj, I come live at 6 p.m. India time on Saturdays as well. And thanks for that smiley there. Lovely. Okay, so can you all guess which is this place? Right, so that's the correct answer there. And no points for guessing. Yes, it is New York, USA. Right. Okay, so let's move ahead to the next one, which is Buckingham Palace. And yeah, I get the correct comment there. Lovely. So that's the correct one, London, UK, Buckingham Palace. And we move on to the next one, which is Taj Hotel, a famous landmark in, yes, in the city of Mumbai in India, right? And let's move ahead to the next one. So these are some popular places that you all are guessing correctly. Lovely. That's right, New York, and then I have London. Great. So I am getting some responses to the previous questions here. That is again correct. So the next, okay, so the Colosseum, that's again the correct response there. It is Rome in Italy. And now I have the last picture, and I'm sure that you're going to give the correct answers for this one as well. It is the Lotus Temple, and you're supposed to observe pin drop silence in this place. And this place, that is right again. This is the answer that I get to the previous one. And yes, that's correct. It is again in India and in the capital state of New Delhi. Lovely. So those were the Think Like a Pro's questions, and wonderful job that all of my folks have done here. Yes, kudos to you all. Brilliant. And now let's move ahead to the next fun segment, which is Locate the Word, right? Now, here I'm going to show you a letter maze in a little while, and you need to have an eagle's vision and find out all the four hidden words. It could be written horizontally, vertically, or even diagonally. And all these words are from today's episode, right? So, yes, that's the correct response, Just Raj. And let's move ahead to the letter maze. There it is. And can you all find out the four hidden words in this letter maze? All of these words are from the episode of today. Okay, so let me see how quickly you can discover all the four words which are hidden here. Um, the first word that I get there is modern, and that is correct. Okay, and I get another word there, which is urban. That is again correct. That is also right. I get a third word there. So I want all of the others to also guess these words. So I'm not letting out the answers right now. Jasraj, you have missed the first two letters. Yes, so I think all of the answers are already out there in the chat box. So let me reveal out the answers here. The first one is urban, and we have the second word, which is modern. Also, the third one, which is city, and the fourth word is mystery. So that was the word, Jasraj. Mystery was the word, right? So after this locate the word segment, I get a lot of emojis there, some thumbs up, some smileys, and I know you all had fun playing out that segment, right? Great. So let's move ahead to the next segment, which is At a Glance. And I'm going to give you a quick roundup of all that we learned in today's episode, right? That's okay, just Raj. You needn't be sorry for that, right? It's okay. And let's move ahead to the first at a glance segment, which is the essentials. And we saw that we need an urban setting, some supernatural elements or quirky magic, and also a protagonist who is based on both the worlds. So he or she is also a part of the real world, but at the same time is also a part of the supernatural world, right? So these were the essentials. And the plot building pointers, we saw we can bring or introduce a particular conflict to the story, which both the protagonist and the supernatural creature, they will come together jointly and try to solve whatever that conflict you have introduced in your story. And there is going to be a modern world, so you can also talk about the places or the important landmarks that are there in your urban setting, right? And always you can also add a lot of mystery and thrill, craft some killer action scenes to into your story, right? So these were the plot points. And after this, I have a fun project work for all of my dear viewers here. And I would want you all to put pen to paper and try writing a short story on urban fantasy all by yourselves, and take it from me. It's only the first step that matters, right? A journey of 1,000 miles begins from a single step, right? So that's the adage that we want all of you to go by, right? And do try writing your own urban fantasy story with all the lessons that you have learned in today's episode. Yes. So with that, we come to the end of our episode for today, right? And for tomorrow, again at 6 p.m. India time, we have thriller and suspense as the main category, and there would be a different subcategory that we would be exploring and discovering for tomorrow. So, till the time we embark on that journey tomorrow, I want you all to take good care of yourselves, stay happy, and keep smiling. I'm Sapna Mahadevan signing out for today. Bye bye.